Welcome back for another episode of the Blue White Illustrated Recruiting Podcast. And today is a exciting day, a little bit of a change for our podcast here. Greg's been doing a great job, but we're going to bring in Sean and I, and we're going to do this moving forward. So we're really excited to talk about some Zion Tracy confirmed visitor list for this past weekend, which was really solid. Of course, I put in a new on-3 prediction machine pick, which most of you've seen by now, and we'll hit on a few other things. So let's get it started. All right, guys, I'm Ryan Snyder, of course, and that is Sean Fitz. We've been wanting to do this for a really long time. Sean, I think we've had many texts about doing a podcast, but for legal reasons, we were never able to do it until now. We're obviously really excited about this. Sean and I are going to be doing the recruiting podcast every Tuesday now, and I'm going to somehow try and be a host. So bear with me here as we get through this, but Fitz, happy to have you on.
I think you did a great job bringing us in there. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. 12 years we went head to head, and it was a lot of competition, a lot of fun, core values, etc. But no, it's been great to come together. Ryan, of course, total pro, best at what he does. Obviously, has been amazing over this last 12 years for Blue White Illustrated, and I'm pumped to work with him because you, a father of young children, me, a father of young
Yes.
children, we take a little bit off of each other's plate. We're pretty happy about that. So, but we want to talk about ourselves as much as you want to hear us talk about ourselves. So we're going to talk about recruiting, and we're going to do that by starting with Zion Tracy. Of course, Penn State hosted a big group of visitors that we'll get to in a bit, but Zion Tracy was the one that we've been watching for a long time now. Officially tweeted out that offer. I think it was the middle of last week or the beginning of last week. We've been talking on Blue White Illustrated that's kind of a formality. That's where he was, He came to camp at the end of July, blew the staff away, did a really good job. You could probably consider it an offer right after that. But for multiple reasons, they held off on doing that. But Penn State picked up a commitment. He joined the class over the weekend. It's a really, really interesting pickup because Penn State wasn't going into camp season necessarily looking for a corner. They're recruiting some national guys across the board. Tracy came, I believe it was the last full camp of July, ran in the 4.3s for Penn State, showed out in one-on-ones, really, really frustrated Johnny Shakir. Shakir, by the way, 12 catches, 122 yards or 112 yards and a touchdown in front of James Franklin and Taylor Stubblefield last week. So he's doing okay. But Tracy's one of those guys. He was overlooked playing in high school, going to prep school at St. Thomas More in Connecticut now. The athletic pedigree is there. That's kind of what you worry about when you see these prep school guys or these guys that are overlooked is, hey, they can be really good players. And as you see on the YouTube video here, Tracy taking back a pick six, they can be really good players. But if the measurements don't back up and the testing numbers don't back up, Penn State's not going to move on them. But he came in, did a phenomenal job at camp, and really made the staff change their outlook, change their mindset, and made the staff make him a take.
Right. And I think it's important too. Like, it wasn't like this was the first time he's been up at Penn State. I mean, he came to Penn State last mid-summer and ran, I think it was like a mid 4.5, something like that. I want to say maybe a little bit lower.
I think it was high 4.4, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good time, but it wasn't like an elite time. So they saw progression there, which is, of course, is what you always want to see. I mean, of course, he's a postgraduate guy now too. I mean, he was committed to Temple last year. That coaching change happens. Not exactly sure what happened there, whether that was his decision, Temple's decision, who knows, but it works out pretty well for Penn State. He comes up, saw some great times, as you said. Watching him against Johnny that night, man, was interesting. I mean, Johnny had some plays there too, but I think Johnny would be the first to tell you that Zion was giving him some troubles that evening.
Flustered him, yeah.
Right. It was maybe a day after where we were talking to some people, and they were like, hey, we're having serious talks about Zion Tracy now, which was not something we really expected. Coming out of the camp, we knew he was good, but like you said, I mean, they didn't really have to take a corner, and they had to after that.
You go to camps now, and Penn State does this thing where they color code by class. So the white jerseys are the 2023, so the current class, and then they got gray jerseys and black jerseys, blue jerseys, for younger guys. And typically by this time in the cycle, we're watching the blue jersey, we're watching the underclassmen.
Right.
Most of the offers that come out are 2024, 2025. So you see that white jersey, and you kind of toss these guys off to the side. I hate putting it in that nature, but that's kind of how things go, because Penn State already had 19 guys in the class or 18 guys in the class, something like that. So you kind of disregard these guys, and then all of a sudden this guy pops up and he just keeps making play after play after play. So you're forced to notice him. The size is good. What really surprised me is looking at some of the length numbers on him, 33.5-inch arms, which you've seen Joey Porter. You see what he does with his 34-inch arms, and you feel pretty good about that. Length is such a golden trait for a lot of these college coaches. I mean, he's only a shade over 5'11", close to 6 foot, 170. But he's got the length to back it up. He's got those testing numbers to back it up. The explosion at 10.7 broad. So he's got a lot.
I wanted to hit on that.
Yeah,
those explosion numbers. Those
that's
were a big part of it too.
You look back at Penn State's corners, and Kristen Campbell is probably their best broad jumper. Right, is right around 11 feet, just over 10.7. That's flying right there.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, that was the one thing we kind of overlook. You know, we always look at 40s and shuttles, and I think those are the numbers that fans always want to know. But hitting on those broad jump times, seeing that explosion, man, it played a big part in it. So Penn State, of course, gets this commitment now. I think they're pretty much done at corner, Sean. I guess you got Roger Pleasant out there, but I mean, I don't know.
You got Roger Pleasant. You've got Daniel Harris, who's committed to Georgia. I mean, it's going to be tough flipping anybody from Georgia, let alone a cornerback from the South. Still looking at some guys, but I mean, you have to think that with the other needs out there, you still want an offensive tackle. You still are looking at a second running back / athlete. We talked about Christopher Johnson last week on the site from South Florida. So yeah, I think there's just too many needs out there to look at another corner right now. But they're always looking to get faster. They're always looking to add speed, length, and athleticism in that back end. So I think they'll still keep talking to these guys. I think you look at maybe wide receiver having a just wide receiver being a target that they would go after before you go after another corner. But Terry always wants as many corners as he possibly can have.
Right.
And the way that they've played in the last 2 years, you feel pretty good about that corner room, and you feel good about anybody that they really take a shot on.
Yeah, we'll circle back to 2023 here before we finish this up, but I think we got to get into this Ohio visitor list, which, I mean, is it fair to say this was the best season opener visitor list that we've ever, or home opener, I guess I should say, that I've ever, I mean, you've known a little bit longer than I have, but I can't remember too many that were this deep for a home opener, which, usually has a bunch of walk-ons, maybe a couple committed guys, but I mean, there were 20 plus scholarship guys here this weekend.
Yeah, the noon opener usually has that visitor list dotted with guys like Belfont and State College guys, because it's it's tough to make it. But of course, Tom Lemming was in town. He does this once a year, has his little photo shoot downtown at State College's high school field, brings in some of the region's top talent. Now, a lot of that is 2024, 2025, but that's pretty much what we've been focusing on for the most part. So I would agree with you. Really, really good visitor list, considering the opponent, considering the start time and things like that. I mean, I think it's an incredible turnout, to be honest with you.
Dylan Stewart was probably the top guy in attendance this past week. I mean, he's going to be a 5-star player. He's not a 5-star at the moment. On 3, they add 5 stars as they go. Right now, I think there's only 3 5-star players, and of course, he's ranked number 4. Yeah, so I mean, it's going to end up being 35 stars. He's going to be a 5-star by the time it's all said and done. I mean, I haven't caught up with Dylan yet. I don't know if you've been able to gather too much yet. I mean, obviously, he's going to be incredibly important, but he's going to be coveted by everybody. So I just don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves there. Yes, he's very important to Penn State, but I think there's a ways to go. Was this actually one thing, Sean? Was this his second visit to Penn State? Do you know?
That was his second visit to Penn State. He did come for the Michigan game last year.
That's right.
Check things out. So I mean, he's been a guy that Penn State's been on for a long time. I believe they offered in January or something like that of last year. Friendship Collegiate Academy, of course, that's a spot Azar used to be the head coach there, and they've certainly grown and had some good talent. So they've got relationships down there. But yeah, Dylan Stewart's going to be, I mean, he's going to be a top target for Ohio State, Alabama, that tier of college football. So right. It's going to be a tough one, but just get him on campus and make him feel comfortable. That's pretty much what you can do at this point.
Yeah, just keep chipping away. A couple other guys that kind of grabbed my attention. You did a story on Jalen McClain. I think Jalen's going to be, I mean, he's definitely one of Penn State's top cornerback prospects in the class. Any takeaways from that, Sean? I haven't caught up with him myself yet. A little bit of texting, but you spoke with him a little more than I did.
Yeah, I mean, he's familiar with Penn State. He's been to Rutgers a bunch, just being there in New Jersey, but he's been to Penn State a few times. Curious if he is a corner, if he is a safety. We'll see what happens with his development, his speed, and things like that. Kind of what we talked about with Tracy. I mean, can he turn a 4.6, 4.7 into a 4.4? It's hard to say at this point, and really we're just speculating at this end. But yeah, Penn State's gotten a chance to get him on campus now a couple of times. Would have liked to get him on campus this summer to work with him at camp. But yeah, I think that they're one of the schools that are firmly in the mix. You and I have talked so many times. There's so many guys in this 2024 class. Penn State has thrown offers out like crazy. Everybody's throwing offers out like crazy. They that little asterisk doesn't mean as much as it used to, but at the same time, you're getting yourself out there. You're putting them on their evaluation list, and we're going to see how that film comes in, because there's going to be a lot of guys that have that check mark beside their name that we're not going to be talking about in 2 months, 3 months. So, but McLean, I think, is a guy that they'll continue to get on, whether it's as a corner, whether it's as a safety. I think they've, positioned themselves well in the early going.
Yeah, I mean, how many times we have people on our board like trying to do, the most important guys in the class, and we're like, look, let's just get to November here, get that film in, and this board is going to look completely different than what we're even projecting it to be right now. Yes, we know those 5-star guys and those high 4-star guys, but even some of those guys are going to end up falling off. It always happens. So
I mean, last year this time we're talking what AJ, Antonio Tripp, Sean Battle as crystal balls, and Penn State just kind of went the other direction on both of those guys, and just found other targets. So that's kind of how the early recruiting is playing out now. You scout more kids than ever. You have more kids visiting on campus than ever, but it's going to turn in the other direction for some kids, and that's going to be tough for them to kind of deal with.
Yep. One thing I did last week too is I went back and kind of compared the talent in the Mid-Atlantic region to previous years. And of course, it's not an apples to apples comparison, because you look at those classes are done. A lot of guys were higher ranked that have fallen off and stuff. And I think I tried to clarify that in the story. But right now, this Mid-Atlantic region for 2024 could have as many as 40 4-star players. And that's, from Virginia up to New York. That if that does shake out that way, you're looking at one of the best classes, one of the deepest talent pools, that Franklin's had since he's been here. So that's just something to keep in mind here moving forward. This is setting up to be a really good year, a strong year in the region, and Penn State's going to need to take advantage of it. Just a couple other guys I want to mention real quick. Brandon Raymond, solid wide receiver prospect. He was up with a bunch of St. Joseph's Prep guys. David Washington was here. Of course, Anthony Sacca. I think Penn State fans should know him by now. He's 2025, but we're going to be talking about him a ton. A couple other guys that kind of grabbed my attention. This is DeJuan Williams, I believe, from St. Francis, the running back prospect. Penn State does a good job getting St. Francis guys on campus. They were hoping to get Michael Van Buren and one or two others on campus. They didn't show, but Williams did show up. So he's a guy I'm going to be trying to reach out to here in the coming days. Jeray Hawkins. Yeah, he is. Jeray Hawkins, too. You caught up with him. Speedster came up to Penn State this summer, had a really good workout for them. He's another guy, though, where I would assume let's watch the film here and they'll get a better feel for where he's at on the board. And I forgot to mention Samaj Jones, too. He's a quality quarterback prospect from St. Joseph's Prep that was up. But the one guy I do want to hit on here that was up this past weekend, Dominic Nichols. I put in an RPM for him this past, today. And look, Sean, we talk about this all the time. There's two kind of RPMs out there, right? There's the one where, hey, something's coming. Be aware of it. We get it in maybe a week or two before. And then there's others where the tea leaves are just telling you everything you need to know. And this is one of those. I'm not trying to say that I expect Nichols to commit in the coming weeks. He may not even commit in 2022. This may go into the spring. I'm not exactly sure on that. What I am pretty sure is Penn State's the team to beat here. I mean, we're talking about 4 visits to Penn State compared to 1 to, I think it's Va Tech, Maryland, Pitt, and Michigan State, I want to say. And yes, he's going to go see some of those other schools with time, but just everything here is pointing in Penn State's direction. I believe his aunt is a Penn State alum. We've talked about that before. Great connection with Kenny Sanders, great connection really with the entire staff, and just consistent visits. First in January, again in May, again in June, and now we're talking one in September. And guess what? He's going to be back next month for the whiteout. So I put in that pick this week. I think he's a pretty important prospect. He was one of those guys that before the offer went out, I had people, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You need to take a look at this kid. And then sure enough, an offer comes about 2 weeks later. That was, I believe, at the end of December. Some people were nudging that I need to take a look at him. So just a great player. I think, Sean, you kind of agree with this, right? Like this is Penn State to lose. Although, yes, it's early, But right now, I mean, how can you not think Nittany Lions aren't the favorite?
Yeah, I more than kind of agree with it. I think it's a really good pick, and it's one I think you've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, just to nudge you over the edge. Is that last visit? I know you talked to Nichols. This is a logic pick. Plus, you throw all those facts on top of there. This is kind of what you want the RPM to be. You factor in the visits, you factor in the distance, you factor in these things. So it should go in Penn State's way. But this is one where, you look at where he's at, you look at the early relationship. I mean, Penn State was one of the first schools on him. What did he picked up an offer and then visited a couple of days later, I think it was. So there's so many data points that just point to Penn State in this one. And this is one of the guys, like a Cooper Cousins, you'd like to get in the boat early. This is a really, really good player, an on 300 type of kid, 4-star type kid. And then, it's also at a premium position. You're struggling at edge in the 2023 class. So get on board and try and get ahead of it with the 2024 class. Dom Nichols would be a heck of a start to that defensive class. And I agree with you. I don't know that it's going to happen anytime soon, but the more and more that wave starts building in Penn State's favor, you continue to feel good about this one.
Yeah, two things I'll add. One, I'll be curious to see if he can get to some schools here over the next 6 weeks or so before he returns for that whiteout visit. Not saying I would expect him to commit that day or anything, but just let's see if he can get to Michigan State, get to maybe Vatech. Those are the two schools he was mentioning to me. It's always good to check out some other schools if you are thinking about maybe committing later in the year. I don't think that's coming. Maybe I'm pushing that a little bit too much, but let's just see how these next 6-7 weeks go and if he can get to other schools before he gets back. And then two, he's a great, personality wise, he would work really well in this class to help build it. I mean, Cooper's doing everything he can, but he's one guy right now. So just getting those personalities in, those guys that, communicate well and good, like I said, just fun personalities. You get a couple of those guys early, and that's how you can start building a class. So he'll certainly be a guy Penn State's pushing pretty hard for here in the weeks ahead. Let's transition to Jaxon Smolik now. I just went out to Iowa this past weekend, which is not a place I was expecting to go a couple weeks ago or a couple of months ago. But man, I enjoyed it. I'll just start by saying so let's start by this. The game featured Jaxon Smolik against JJ Cole, right? And we talked so much about JJ Cole before Smolik even came on the radar because he was a guy Penn State was interested in. It didn't really go very far, I would say. Iowa State was always
Stokes, and Penn State, ended up with Stokes. So yeah, I think that's kind of where they fit after Dante Moore was kind of like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not coming in behind Drew Aller. So
exactly. And Cole was always, his dad's an Iowa State alum. So it never really went that far. That's kind of where I'm getting at. But I mean, this was a matchup between two of the best quarterbacks in the Midwest. So I see this. All right, check. Let's go. So of course I get out there then and I learn about Ankeny in this new wild defense that they're running, where basically they had their defensive linemen, not only all of them standing up for a good chunk of the game, but some of them would be 5 yards off the ball, and then they just bum rush. I think you'll see them in one or two of these clips here. But the point was just because of that defense, the whole game plan was to run the ball and short to intermediate passes. So unfortunately, we didn't get to watch a ton of Smolik, in 25-yard outs and those fun throws that we all love to see. But I thought he played pretty well, all things considered. That play there should have been a pick. He got lucky on that one. But for the most part, he played pretty well. I think it was stats for, I want to say it was 13 and 19, 100 and some yards. I forget it off the exact top of my head. One touchdown. He completed about 70 yards of his passes. 127 was the yards there. But yeah, I think a couple things. I saw a smart player who made pretty good decisions throughout the game. He had a fumble, which hurt him, and he had that one play there that T. Frank just showed that should have been a pick. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty much I agreed with just about everything I saw, or from my point of view, he was making the right throws. Good pocket presence as well. He certainly had to use his legs at times to that game. Jaxon came up to Penn State this year and I think surprised us for the most part with some of his testing times. Ran I think it was a 4.7 40, and I think it was a 4.3, 4.4 shuttle, somewhere in that ballpark.
Something like that.
Yeah. So pretty good.
He's more athletic than you'll give him credit for. Yeah, no doubt.
Exactly. So saw some of those things there. Saw an incredible leader as well. I mean, at one point, man, he's over there stretching his guys out like a trainer and all types of fun things. I mean, but really, I was down there for a couple huddles and things like that. And no doubt about it. I mean, from a leadership perspective, character perspective, there's a lot of things that Penn State fans are going to love. about Jaxon. Got to know Jaxon's family too. Shout out to the Smolik family. So one thing I learned about Des Moines is it is impossible to get Ubers in Des Moines. So if you're going there, folks, make sure you have a rental car or something. But Smolik family gave me a ride back from Ankeny. Much appreciated. They're a great family, and just enjoy going out there to see Jaxon. Wish he would have threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, but hey, the game plan was to run the ball, short to intermediate passes, and he executed pretty well.
You said he was averaging like 30 passes a game or something like that,
right?
Heading into it, so definitely different. I took a screenshot and sent it to you. That defense where they were, playing their D line at linebacker depth was definitely an interesting wrinkle. Haven't seen that one pop up too often. But yeah, you look at what Penn State did at the quarterback position this year, and coming off of a class in which you get the number one quarterback in the country in Drew, and then of course Bo Prabula, a local kid. Obviously, he's a really, really good player in his own right. It was going to be very tough for Penn State to capitalize and bring in another quarterback. They just don't have that reputation on the national level. Whereas Ohio State has stacked guys, Texas has stacked guys, Alabama has stacked guys. Penn State just not on that level in terms of quarterback reputation. You hope with the development of some of these guys they can get there, but that's a conversation for probably 2 or 3 years down the road. So they went out, they got Marcus Stokes. I think Smolik probably a better personality fit than Marcus Stokes.
Absolutely.
But, similar in terms of talent level, in terms of throwing the ball and things like that. So, but Smolik came in, was obviously committed to Tulane, came in and camped with what I thought was a pretty decent crop of guys that were throwing at that camp. There was a UNLV commit that I guess Tulane, I forget the name off the top of my head.
Diefenbach?
Yeah, that Diefenbach was it. What it is. Yeah. And Tulane actually was the first offer. That was the first offer Tulane made after Smolik flipped. So, I think Penn State did a job
too, right? Wasn't that the Boise? Sorry, cut you off. CJ Tiller too, the Boise State commit.
Boise State commit. I think there was one other one that was in from the West Coast. That so it was a good group. Smolik obviously I think won the crown, won the offer in that, and then he flipped not too long after that. So good rebound there by Penn State to grab a quality quarterback. And it sounds bad saying maybe an in-between guy or something like that after taking Drew last year, but Jackson's he's a really good quarterback. He was an Elite 11 guy, a guy that really impressed down there as well. So a really good job rebounding and grabbing another guy by Penn State. And then they set the table for 2024, and you've got an opportunity to try and, win over one of those top targets there. So, considering where it was a couple of months ago, where Marcus Stokes kind of up and left out of nowhere, essentially, and flipped to Florida, that's a pretty good job by Penn State staff.
Yeah, for sure. I'd see a lot of things too that can improve as well. And that's what you want, right? You want guys that can be molded, can improve, and just keep kind of gradually going. So I took a lot from that. And really, I mean, like I said, he's perfect for this locker room too, especially because he's going to be compared to Drew forever. And he knows that. And same like Bo knew that. I mean, everybody's going to kind of be compared to Aller. So just kind of how you handle that and things like that. And mentally, there's no doubt about it that he'll fit in well, and just kind of a team guy. And hey, man, who knows what'll end up happening here moving forward? We go back and point to Trace McSorley all the time, man. Who knows who's going to eventually emerge as the top guy? But
yeah, quarterback's so crazy. I mean, so much of that work is done in the portal. What was it? 50% of the starters in week one were transfer quarterbacks. So there's going to be moving pieces. Obviously, not forecasting that for any of those guys right now, but there's going to be moving pieces. That's just the nature of the position, and that'll be an interesting watch moving forward. But we're not worried about that. We're worried about your trip to Des Moines. I hope it was all right, all Ubers considered. But yeah, look, it seemed like a productive trip.
I took a yellow cab for the first time in, I don't know, a decade. It was a nice guy, though. He got me where I needed to be. All right, let's finish this off. Sean, you and I have not really been able to chat about the 2023 class. I mean, in the text, we talk about it every day, but not really too much publicly. Penn State's at 20 commitments now. I think we're projecting 23, but God knows if there's a top guy out there, they're going to get it to 24, 25. Just kind of your thoughts on key positions here moving forward. We hit on this a little bit earlier, but I think it's good to circle back. Actually, one other thing too, you just talked to about Chris Johnson a little bit earlier. You did that interview last week. Is he a realistic target for them?
Yeah, this is going to be tough to get him away from Miami. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz right now with Cristobal down there, and he's a local kid, and he's a guy that they're targeting. I mean, sometimes with those Florida guys, it depends. Is Florida going after him? Florida State, Miami going after him hard? well, those two schools, at least Florida State and Miami, are on him pretty hard. So it's going to be tough. He wants to get up for an official visit. Penn State's on him, but yeah, that's going to be a tough one. But you look at what he's got, and this is not just a diamond in the rough guy. This is a guy that ran a 10.45. I think it was a 10.45 40, won the state title in Florida last year in the 100 meters. 10.45 100.
I know, you said it backwards.
Yeah, sorry. Still knocking that rust off, man.
Yeah,
he's a fast guy. He's a great player. Penn State's in the mix, but they're going to have to get him up on campus. This is not a situation where it's a diamond in the rough pulling a guy at the last minute. This is a bona fide 4-star guy, and really an interesting prospect. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that running back slot. I mean, do you find a guy like a Christopher Johnson, who is a running back / slot receiver type person or type player, and do you make that a priority? London Montgomery was once again down this weekend, but of course he's a year away from doing anything because of his knee injury. So you've got plenty of questions there, and the running back position is a portal position as well. So do you look at a potential transfer there at running back? I think they have to look at something, because you're not sure how that room's going to look, especially when Nick Singleton does the things that Nick Singleton did on Saturday. So that's going to be tough. Still plenty of positions out there to look at on the defensive line. Of course, you're going to throw numbers at defensive end. They've done a nice job cultivating some depth. I like what we saw this weekend from guys like Amin Vanover, Denai Dennis Sutton. You still have some holes in that after losing a couple of guys. TJ Parker, that was a tough one, man. You look back at all the decommitments over the summer, and Tamarian Parker was really a tough one to swallow. I know they're still trying to get him back onto campus, but that one I don't see happening. So you've really got to adjust and figure out what you've got aside from Jameel Lyons at defensive end. I think that's probably one of the biggest storylines looking is what's John Scott Jr. going to do to fill those holes in this class on the defensive line.
Yeah, still kind of up in the air a little bit there. Up in the air offensive line too. I thought by now we'd see maybe a couple tackles. I'm kind of thinking they're going to go maybe junior college. I mean, there's just a little bit more talk about some JUCO guys.
Portal's like a given. They're going to go.
The portal's going to happen every year.
Yeah, they're going to try and go for one offensive lineman in the portal every year, and that's whether it works out like that or not. I mean, I think it's going to be something that you have to look at, especially with tackle depth being what it is. Yeah.
So I'll just be curious to see what happens there. I mean, I think they're going to go, like I said, portal every year. If they can get somebody, they're going to somebody of quality. I remember Andy Frank kind of talking about that after, signing day. And just like, hey, look, like there are positions out there that the portal is more valuable for. Of course, quarterback, if you need the experience, but offensive, defensive line, you can just contribute sooner. You're more physically ready. So I think offensive line, they'll always be looking there. But I do still kind of get the impression they want to try and find a high school tackle. So who that will be, I don't know. And I thought that by now we would have a better feel for that. So that's kind of still up in the air a bit. At wide receiver, Edwin Joseph just got that Miami offer. There's talk, though, that he might be coming up here for an official visit soon. Working on that. Let's see what happens there. And then what? I mean, linebacker, they should be pretty much done with. I mean, Kavion Keys seems like he's going to end up in North Carolina. I forgot about Cam Seldon. That's still kind of being worked on there at wide receiver. And don't forget about Kenny Johnson, too, at Dallas Town. I'm just going to keep plugging that one there because I think they're working on him.
There's more lines in the water at receiver than you think. And then I talked about this. I think when I came over, you mentioned Cam Seldon. They went and saw Rodney Gallagher, Carmelo English, an Auburn commit. They're looking and trying to get on campus. So there's a lot of lines out there. In this receiver target. There's more receivers out there than anything. So that makes sense. But yeah, I think there's going to keep pushing. From a flip standpoint, you're going to get to the point where you find programs that are in flux with coaching changes and things like that. Maybe a tackle pops up there. Maybe another athlete that you've been tracking pops up there. I do think that they'll, at least be active and trying to set the table for a flip. Probably one or two will happen. I mean, it's just kind of the way that it happens every year. So the funny part about this is you mentioned the offensive line. That's a great offensive line class. I mean, you look at Birchmeyer and Javen Williams, those guys, Anthony Donka. You've got tools there, you've got pieces there, but you just want to keep throwing numbers and talent there just to figure out if you can put together one of the top offensive line classes in the country. And at the same time, you can say, Evan Lake, that hurt. that was a big one. That was one where they were the first or second offer for Evan Link early, and ended up at a program at a Big Ten East rival in Michigan. That one stings. So you're still working at that offensive line. So they've got options out there. They don't have a ton of momentum right now. I don't think anybody can dress that up. I mean, it's great to get the commitment from Zion Tracy, but don't have a ton of commitment momentum with this 2023 class. So you have to scrape down the stretch and hope a few things break their way. Of course, you've got Ohio State, so you've got an opportunity to showcase your program. And I know it's not the whiteout, it's a noon kick, but you still bring in a marquee opponent like that. People want to come to those games. And then I think that you have a real opportunity with the whiteout against Minnesota, being a night game, given an opportunity to showcase that atmosphere. It's really funny because I know the guys that we talk to, the recruits that we talk to, everybody says, I'm coming to the whiteout game. I can't wait to see him play Ohio State. And everybody, you think every year it's either Ohio State, Michigan. Of course, you throw in maybe an SEC opponent or something like that for the whiteout. And that's very confusing for some of these recruits. So it's going to be interesting to see which game they actually end up picking. I think the Minnesota game, a little bit more convenient to get to, a little bit, more fun for the nighttime atmosphere. But that'll be something that you and I have to deal with. The people listening and reading will probably not have to deal with that as much.
Of course, we had guys telling us this past weekend they were coming for the Ohio State game when they were playing Ohio, of course. So that's for us to figure out. But well, Sean, I think this was fun, man. This was the first time doing this, and we'll do it many more times here in the coming weeks. Every Tuesday, that's the schedule here moving forward. And I'm going to keep trying to get better at being a host. Give me a couple weeks, I'll get it polished out. But
hey guys, great job, man.
I'm doing my best. One thing I forgot to do. T Frank's mad at me. Give us a like, of course. I forgot to ask for the likes and the subscribes and all that good stuff. T Frank's been working really hard to build this YouTube page. And of course, man, if you haven't subscribed to BWI, Sean's on board now. It's still $1. Get it in, man, because I don't think it's going to last much longer. I know I've been saying that for a long time, but no, I'm actually serious about that. So please join us, guys. We're going to keep doing this every week. And of course, our whole podcast schedule, nothing's going to change. But Sean, it's great having you on board. I can't wait to push off the things I don't want to do onto you. Although you're going to really, let's be honest, you're going to push off the things you don't want to do onto me. And yeah, man, we're gonna do our best to bring some great coverage here moving forward.
It's the circle of life. That's how we're working. We're just happy to get Greg, or Greg's just happy to be off the recruiting podcast now. So
yes,
but no, it's great. As Ryan said, try us for $1 for a year. That is going away soon. We did have that conversation with our bosses this week, so it's not going to be something that's around forever. I know it's been around forever, but it's not going to be around very much longer. Yes, give us a like on the YouTube page. If you haven't followed the YouTube page, subscribe to it, please do. And that includes all of our social channels, our Twitter, our Instagram, trying to build those things back up. So if you could do that, be a great favor to us. So thank you very much for doing that. Ryan, it's been a real pleasure. We're going to get, we're probably not going to talk over each other as much as we did in this first episode moving forward, but I think we'll sharpen. We'll get 1% better each day, and then we'll make some things happen. So it's great to finally be on this with you. I know when I told people that I was going to On3, one of the first things people asked, "Are you doing a recruiting podcast with Snyder?" And that people obviously love your work. I've admired your work for a long time. But yeah, I'm excited. No, I told you nobody wants to hear us talk about ourselves, and I already did that with Nate the other day, and he's still talking.
I'm flattered. Keep going.
But it's great. It's great to finally do this podcast with you. I'm really looking forward to the future here at Blue White Illustrated.
Awesome, guys. Well, hey, thank you guys so much, T Frank. Take us out, buddy. This was the first of many more of Sean and I talking recruiting. It's been a great, I think a pretty good podcast, all things considered. We'll get better in week 2, though. Appreciate it.